The global economic order is trembling. Around the world, markets are in turmoil, and uncertainty hangs in the air. Investors, business leaders, and everyday workers are all watching closely, as the rules that have governed international commerce for decades are suddenly being rewritten. A new chapter in American trade policy has been opened by the Trump administration, sending shockwaves through international markets. The announcement of sweeping changes to tariffs and trade agreements has left global investors scrambling to assess the impact. Newsrooms buzz with speculation, while trading floors react with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. In early 2025, a bold and controversial strategy to reshape global trade was unveiled. The administration's plan, presented at a high-profile press conference, introduced a series of tariffs that would touch nearly every corner of the world economy. These measures, officials argued, were necessary to protect American interests and restore balance to trade relationships that had long been seen as unfair. The goal is to protect American jobs, but the consequences are complex and painful. While some workers hope for a revival of domestic manufacturing, others fear layoffs and plant closures as companies struggle to adapt. The uncertainty is palpable on factory floors and in communities that depend on global trade for their livelihoods. A universal baseline tariff of 10% on all imports took effect in August 2025. This sweeping policy means that every product entering the United States, from electronics to clothing to raw materials, now faces higher costs. At ports across the country, customs officers are busier than ever, inspecting goods and enforcing the new rules. For specific countries, rates have escalated to 50%. Nations singled out for what the administration calls unfair practices now face steep barriers to selling their goods in the U.S. market. This has triggered a wave of diplomatic protests and threats of retaliation, raising the stakes in an already tense global environment. The average U.S. tariff rate has skyrocketed, disrupting global supply chains. Companies that once relied on seamless international logistics now face delays, shortages, and rising costs. From auto parts to consumer electronics, the ripple effects are being felt in industries large and small, as businesses scramble to find new suppliers or pass costs on to consumers. President Trump frames this as a battle to correct unfair trade practices. At rallies and in speeches, he promises that these tough measures will bring jobs back to American soil and restore the nation's economic strength. Supporters cheer the bold stance, seeing it as a long overdue defense of American workers and industries. Major U.S. corporations and small businesses warn of rising costs and potential relocations. Executives voice concerns about the long-term competitiveness of American firms, while small business owners worry about staying afloat. Some companies consider moving operations overseas to avoid tariffs, while others brace for shrinking profit margins and tough choices ahead. The story of these tariffs is not just international diplomacy, it's about American families feeling the pinch. As prices rise on everyday goods, households across the country are forced to make difficult decisions. For many, the new era of global trade is not an abstract policy debate, it's a reality that touches their wallets, their jobs, and their future. The protectionist turn of 2025 didn't emerge from a vacuum. It's the culmination of a narrative that gained traction during Trump's first term. The belief is that free trade agreements have hollowed out American manufacturing. During his initial presidency, Trump initiated a trade war with China. The 2025 policy treats nearly every trading partner as a potential adversary. The elimination of the de minimis rule was a direct assault on the e-commerce model. The announcement of a 10% tariff on all imports was a shock for American businesses. This blanket tax altered the cost structure for companies reliant on foreign inputs. Businesses faced a choice to absorb costs or pass them to consumers. Kurt Goldman, CEO of CNI Brands, highlighted the trickle-down effect. The impact extends beyond large corporations, affecting global supply chains. The tariff is compounded as goods cross borders multiple times. The administration's willingness to adjust rates creates uncertainty. This baseline shock signals that established trade rules are no longer in effect. Companies must rethink their future and pricing strategies. The 10% tariff was just the beginning. It marked a dramatic shift in U.S. trade policy, sending shockwaves through global markets and signaling a new era of economic confrontation. For decades, the world had grown accustomed to relatively stable trade relationships, but this announcement upended expectations overnight. the Trump administration quickly escalated, rolling out even steeper tariffs against specific countries. These moves were justified as efforts to protect American industries and jobs, but they also targeted long-standing trading partners, raising concerns about the future of international cooperation. India and Brazil, both major exporters to the US, suddenly faced 50% tariffs on key goods. For their businesses and workers, the impact was immediate. Shipments stalled, contracts were renegotiated, and uncertainty rippled through their economies. Even close allies like Japan weren't spared, with tariffs set at 15%. This sent a clear message. No country was exempt from the new rules, regardless of past alliances or shared interests. The international response was swift. Retaliation came from all corners. Protests erupted, diplomats scrambled to negotiate, and world leaders convened emergency summits to address the growing crisis. Trade wars are rarely one way. As the US imposed new barriers, other nations responded in kind, setting the stage for a global standoff. Major trading partners, including the European Union and China, implemented their own tariffs on US goods. American products faced new hurdles at borders worldwide, from agricultural exports to high-tech equipment. The EU, after tense negotiations, managed to negotiate its rate down. But the process was fraught with uncertainty, and the threat of further escalation always loomed. The pattern was clear: tit-for-tat escalation. Each new round of tariffs prompted a countermeasure, creating a cycle that was difficult to break and even harder to predict. The standoff with China became especially intense, with threats of tariffs exceeding 100% on both sides. This raised the stakes for global supply chains and threatened to disrupt entire industries. Even close neighbors like Canada were not immune. High tariffs led to tense negotiations and strained relationships, as both sides struggled to protect their own economies. The use of tariffs as a negotiating tool injected instability into relationships that had once been predictable and mutually beneficial. Businesses and governments alike were forced to adapt to a new, more volatile reality. The average US tariff rate surged to levels not seen in decades, sending shockwaves through financial markets and prompting analysts to warn of long-term consequences. For supply chain managers, the environment became a guessing game. Delays, rerouted shipments, and sudden changes in costs made planning nearly impossible. Companies of all sizes now faced a more hostile, expensive, and unpredictable world. Boardrooms filled with anxiety as executives tried to navigate the new landscape, while small business owners struggled to absorb rising costs. The strategy of using tariffs to secure better deals has led to a more challenging environment for everyone involved. As factories closed and warehouses emptied, the world was left to grapple with the consequences of a new era in global trade. The economic consequences of the new tariff regime are immediate challenges for iconic companies. Hershey and Procter & Gamble warned of price hikes on consumer staples. These giants signal that tariffs are too large to absorb. The policy forces strategic reconsideration beyond price adjustments. Companies discuss relocating operations outside the US. This paradoxically threatens the very jobs tariffs aim to protect. The front line of this trade war is in boardrooms, reshaping the industrial landscape. Small businesses face an existential crisis under steep tariffs. Lacking resources, they are vulnerable to sudden cost increases. Nicola Bell, owner of Surrey Hills Stones, faces a 50% cost increase. Her only option is to pass costs to customers, risking sales. Minority-owned businesses are particularly affected. The policy creates economic casualties in communities that drive local economies. The tariffs are a direct tax on small businesses, weakening neighborhoods. The cost of a trade war is paid by consumers. Tariffs are taxes passed on to the American public. The price of everyday items is climbing, straining household budgets. The impact is most noticeable in grocery aisles. Prices are rising on imported staples like bananas and coffee. Tariffs function as a regressive tax, hitting lower-income families hardest. The impending tariff on pharmaceuticals creates anxiety for patients. The consumer's burden is a direct consequence of protectionist policy. The macroeconomic picture reveals broader damage from the tariff policy. While the US economy showed growth, tariffs create serious headwinds. Tariffs act as a drag on growth, even as they generate short-term revenue. The most immediate effect is on inflation, forcing the Federal Reserve into a difficult position. The economic damage extends globally, dragging down growth. The administration touts tariff revenue, but it's a misleading metric. This revenue is a tax extracted from the American economy. The price of this revenue is lost growth and higher inflation. The verdict on the tariff policy is clear. It's economic self-harm. While the intention may be to shield domestic industries from foreign competition, the reality is far more complex and damaging. Protectionist measures like tariffs often backfire, leading to unintended consequences that ripple through the entire economy. Instead of revitalizing struggling sectors, these policies can accelerate their decline, leaving communities with empty factories and lost livelihoods. The war on trade inflicts damage on those it aims to protect. Workers who once relied on manufacturing jobs find themselves facing layoffs, while small business owners struggle to keep their doors open as costs rise and customers dwindle. The very people these policies promise to help are often the first to feel the pain. Tariffs are paid by American families and businesses, not foreign countries. Every time a tariff is imposed, it acts as a hidden tax, raising prices on everyday goods, from groceries to appliances. Families feel the squeeze in their monthly budgets, and small businesses are forced to make tough choices, sometimes cutting jobs or passing costs on to customers. The economic logic of protectionism is flawed in a globalized world. Today, supply chains stretch across continents, and products are assembled from parts made in dozens of countries. Disrupting this flow with tariffs and trade barriers only makes American industries less competitive, not more secure. The threat of a corporate exodus is real, weakening the economy. When doing business in the US becomes too costly or unpredictable, companies look elsewhere, taking jobs, investment, and innovation with them. This hollowing out of the economic base leaves lasting scars on communities and undermines future growth. Legal challenges highlight the policy's radical break from norms. Courts are now grappling with the legality of sweeping trade restrictions, and the uncertainty only adds to the instability facing businesses and workers alike. The solution is not to double down, but to embrace openness and integration. By working with global partners, investing in innovation, and supporting workers through change, America can build a more resilient and prosperous economy for all. The trade war has no winners, only varying degrees of losers. The longer it drags on, the more communities suffer, and the harder it becomes to recover lost ground. Acknowledging the flawed policy is the first step to repairing the damage. Only by facing the facts and choosing a smarter path forward can we hope to restore economic vitality and opportunity for everyone.